What is your impression upon hearing the twist of things? Do you think the Carl Vinson storyline was misunderstanding, or is it part of US playing psychological warfare or bluffing?
I suspect it's more the latter. It's a bit of psychological warfare. The Carl Vinson had been in Korean waters earlier on, at the beginning, I believe, of the current US-South Korean exercises, which are an annual event, and then was moved off to Singapore. And the announcement at first was that it was going to Australia, and then people said, well, no, it's going to Korea. Now, that might have been a mistake, I suppose. It might have been disinformation, but it might also have been a combination of all those things, that somebody had decided that it would be a good thing to put more pressure on North Korea by moving this collection of ships towards the Korean coast. And you will remember that the President, Mr. Trump, talked about an armada going to Korea. But in the past too, the United States has done this sort of thing. Something similar, not quite the same, but something similar happened a couple of years back when tension got very high at the same period. And then aeroplanes were to be moved to the mainland, from the mainland United States, or from Guam, I can't remember which now, towards Korean Peninsula. There was much international concern at this, and then the planes went away again. So it fits in with not being quite sure what to do, but thinking you should do something, perhaps.
Well, originally, the Public Affairs Office of the Navy's Third Fleet said Pacific Commander Admiral Harriss Jr. ordered the Carl Vinson to leave Singapore and to sail to West Pacific towards the Korean Peninsula. However, the latest information released by the US Navy indicates that the aircraft carrier transiting the Sunda Strait in Indonesian waters, that is about 5,000 kilometers away from the Korean Peninsula. Now, in response, many South Korean and Japanese news media, as well as the New York Times, reported Harris's order as evidence that the crisis was intensifying. What do you think of the behavior of the media? I mean, nobody really went about to check this news because they thought it was really true, and they just reported that and really blew the situation to a much bigger portion.
Yes, I think part of the problem is that journalists don't necessarily have much opportunity to question military statements, and the idea that the Admiral would do this sort of very significant thing without instructions from the President seems, or from the White House in some form or other, seems unlikely. So, but it may have been that as the Carl Vinson and its escort ships were going to take part in an exercise, complete the exercise, and then go to Korea. After all, that the tension wasn't going to go away immediately. I mean, the tension will last certainly as long as the exercises last. It does every year. But whether it was deliberate or whether it was somebody mistaking orders or what, I really don't know, and I don't suppose anybody ever will. Trouble is with the media, I'm sorry about this, is that quite often they see
also
a
be
good
careful.
story,
True.
and they run it. Never exactly getting it completely wrong, but sometimes getting it, shall we say, slightly distorted. And I suspect something like that may have happened in this case. I think many of us were fooled, not just the media. We thought that really the United States was ratcheting up the pressure on North Korea. Which would fit in with the way the two sides behaved during this period.
Now,
we all got it wrong, I think.
For now. Now, some have argued that there has been no change in actual substance of Trump's DPRK policy. Announcement of an aircraft carrier heading your way certainly sends a message that no amount of belligerent late-night twists can. When the announcement proves to be a series of confusion, can the DPRK or the rest of the world really take US threats seriously in the future? Or will we always be fooled?
I don't know about being fooled, but I think one should always be very careful about the high rhetoric that goes on. The North Koreans, as you know, are past masters at over-exaggerating their language, using language that sounds really very belligerent. And every act that they disagree with is an act of war, or a warlike situation has arisen, you have to do a certain amount of discounting from that.
Yeah.
I think you maybe also have to do some discounting from the way the current administration in the United States presents things. It's different from the measured tones of the past. It's much more a personal reaction from the president, and then people have to handle that.
Sure.
Without actually saying we're not doing that.
Yeah, however, the situation has also been kind of used by other countries in that region. For instance, Japan has been reacting or acting in an overly ready manner. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had this to say to the parliament most recently.
The government has been studying the necessary precaution to protect and evacuate Japanese residents from the Korean Peninsula. Also, the new security legislation now enables us to rescue Japanese residents overseas. We are strengthening the measurements to protect Japanese residents overseas.
Now, immediately, South Korea's foreign ministry called on Japan to refrain from fanning security concerns. What is Prime Minister Abe trying to achieve here, Mr. Hoare?
I suspect this is less to do with events in Korea and much more to do with Mr. Abe's approach towards military matters and making Japan a normal country, the term he uses. It's to show that Japan has moved away from its peace constitution to a certain extent. Not that it's abandoned it, but that it's moved on, and that the Japanese can, in circumstances where their nationals are threatened, actually take overseas action, which previous prime ministers did not suggest would be the case. But to suggest that Japan would go in and take people off the Korean Peninsula without consulting South Korea was perhaps a little tactless, to put it no higher. That this is the sort of great fear of the South Koreans and the North Koreans, that Japan's long-term plan is to get back into Korea in a way that it was in the colonial period. I think that's unlikely, but the language used awakens those concerns, just as sometimes Japanese language awakens concerns in China as well. About
yes, the Chinese Foreign Ministry
intentions to.
Yeah. The Chinese Foreign Ministry promptly also opposed the kind of rhetoric or the kind of action to make things much bigger than they really are. Anyway, we have to leave it there. Mr. James Hoare, Associate Fellow with the Chatham House, joining us from London. Thank you very much.